Good afternoon. I'm Karina Rotenstein. I'm the programmer of the TIFF Industry Conference. Welcome to the first of our masterclass series, and what a way to start, can I tell you. Today's session's with Ewan McGregor, so it's exciting. Now, before we start, let me just highlight some of the key masterclasses we have coming up this week. We've got renowned Chinese director Feng Xiaogong. He is here with the film I Am Not Madame Bovary. We've got the creator of Transparent, Jill Soloway. She'll be delivering an original keynote on the female gaze. Do not miss it tomorrow morning. It's going to be amazing. We've got a live performance by Canadian film composer Mark Corvin on Wednesday. Thursday, we wrap up with legendary director-producer Rob Reiner. He'll be here with LBJ. And Doug Lyman will be here to introduce his new VR series, Invisible. So a lot to cover this week. It's very, very exciting. Just a quick note, there is no photography or video recording inside the studio, but all of our sessions will be live streamed to our website. And we do encourage you to tweet, and there's going to be lots of awesome stuff going on stage, so let's capture it, will we? Our masterclass with Ewan McGregor is co-presented with Pinewood Studios Group, and I would like to welcome Owen Egan, Senior Vice President of Pinewood International, to say a few words.
Good afternoon. We're delighted to be here. My name is Owen Egan. I'm the Senior Vice President for Pinewood International. We at Pinewood, we've been extremely proud to sponsor this masterclass series over the past 3 years. It's always great to support filmmakers, directors, especially first-time directors. Pinewood, of course, has been synonymous with a kind of brand excellence in the UK, but we've grown past the UK borders, and we're in China, Malaysia, Dominican Republic. Our first international studio, obviously, here in Toronto, we're very proud of, and we're expanding our facility here in Toronto next year, which we're really excited about. Pinewood has also ventured into North America, into the US, and in Atlanta, Georgia. We will soon be the biggest US studio outside of Los Angeles. What we have in common is a desire to support our world-class filmmakers. We are very proud to have played a very, very small part in Ewan's career to date at Pinewood and Shepperton. He's done movies like Rogue Trader, Miss Potter, Star Wars, and most recently Disney's Beauty and the Beast, which is coming out later this year. And we are very excited about his debut with American Pastoral and proud to support this masterclass. And obviously, when the time comes when he's ready to make his next movie, we'll hopefully be welcoming him back here to the studios in Toronto. Thanks again for everyone at TIFF, to the industry team, to all the team in Pinewood at marketing for making this happen. Please enjoy the masterclass. We're really excited. I'm going to hand you back now to Karina. Thank you.
Now, our masterclass series champions artists who take the long way round to master their craft. In a 20-year career, Ewan McGregor has established himself as one of cinema's most versatile and intuitive actors. He's truly one of the few able to navigate between art house and studio and a galaxy far, far away, Scotland. Most recently, he took his gutsiest leap yet into the director's chair. Ewan returns to TIFF to mark the world premiere of his ambitious directorial debut, American Pastoral. We are incredibly honored to have him take part of the industry conference. And hosting today's masterclass is David Karger. He is an award-winning host, interviewer, and regular contributor to Access Hollywood, former senior writer for Entertainment Weekly, and now serves as a special correspondent for IMDb. Please welcome to the stage Dave Karger and Ewan McGregor.
Thank you so much to Karina and for all of you for being here and everybody who's watching this live on the TIFF website. I'm thrilled to be here for my 15th Toronto International Film Festival and really excited to be here with you, Ewan. So many congratulations on American Pastoral. So you have been acting for over 20 years in film. And it's been 15 years or so that you've been interested in directing. What flipped that switch for you that made you think this is something I'd want to do?
It was sort of the fear of not doing it in a way. I have wanted to direct for a long, long time, like you say, maybe over 15 years. And I think because I've always felt like a filmmaker. Like I think as actors we are filmmakers. We're not just sort of wheeled out from a trailer to say words and wheeled back in again. We are part of the filmmaking process. And I've loved that about filmmaking. I've loved that about the sort of two halves of the brain that you employ as being an actor. I find that really thrilling. The one half of your brain is involved in imagination and the emotional side of things and the truth of a moment, creating reality, false reality of a scene. And the other half of your brain is thinking, oh, the focus puller's on a long lens, so I better not rock him back too forward too much, and I've got to hit that mark, and I've got to remember to look up there. And so the two halves of your brain are working together, an emotional and a technical side. And I've always really loved that. And I like the thrill of that. I can sort of, I can be as thrilled about nailing something technically, stunts. I remember in Black Hawk Down, God, already I'm way off the question. But anyway, it's quite interesting.
I love it.
I think we'll come back. Hopefully we'll get back to it. But anyway, I remember in Black Hawk Down having to do something where a rocket was being fired at me down a wire. It was meant to be an RPG hit. And my character got hit by, or almost hit by a few of them. And I did it for real, and I was never going to get hurt because the thing was on a wire. But I had to get the timing of it right. And it's like fractions of a second would make a difference. And I remember as being thrilled about getting it right as I would be, nailing a big emotional scene or a crying scene or something, where you go, okay, it's good, I got it. So those two things I like very much. And directing is very much, no, I really don't remember the question. Directing is very much about that, isn't it? So it's an extension of acting, really. And that's what drove me to want to do it, I suppose, to be involved in the whole process, technical and emotional, of storytelling, and to feel the thrill of the creative experience with the DP and the costume designer and the production designer and the makeup and hair designer and then eventually the actors on set. I wanted to experience that right from the beginning and to create a story. I mean, I didn't write this film script, but to be at it from the beginning to the end. And I wanted to do that for 15 years, and but I wanted to do it because I had a story that I really wanted to tell. I didn't want to do it just for the sake of it or because I could then say I directed something or to mark it off on my CV. I wanted to do it because there was a story I was burning to tell, and that I felt like only I should be the guy to tell that story. And I came across a novel years and years ago. It was directed by a Canadian director. It was a novel called Silk. And I thought, this is it. And I've chased it. I found out the rights belonged to Mike Figgis. They'd been through Miramax at the time. And eventually they reverted back to the Italian author. And at that point, I was making a film called Young Adam in Scotland with David Mackenzie, and produced by Jeremy Thomas. And Jeremy said to me, I'll produce it with you. And he's an amazing producer. He produces Bertolucci's movies, and he's a beautiful auteur British producer and would have been a brilliant partner in terms of making my first movie. And he said, we just need to go to Italy. And, at this point, the author of the novel did an interview where he said, only a master filmmaker will adapt my novel into a movie, which I read and went, I'm not a master filmmaker, And I got the fear, and Jeremy said, look, all we need to do is go to Italy and meet him and persuade him that persuade him that you're the guy. And I just got the fear. I was frightened, and I didn't. I just resisted, and eventually the film was made by someone else, and I kicked myself, not because anything to do with the film that was made, but just that I might have had an opportunity to do it 15 years ago, and I didn't because I let those voices, negative voices, sort of get in my head. And there was one other thing in the meantime that cropped up, and I found out someone else was making it, And when I realized that American Pastoral might not happen, I mean, the backstory is that I was attached to play the Swede for maybe over 3 years. And it was going to start and it didn't happen. And then we're going to make it and it didn't happen. And late 2014, I was on Broadway doing The Real Thing, Tom Stoppard's play. And I got a phone call saying, we were supposed to shoot March 2015. I got a phone call saying it's not going to happen. And I was just gutted. And films come and go in your career, of course. Films you're attached to don't get made, and you sort of let them go. And it's happened to me in the past, but there was something about this story, American Pastoral, that I just couldn't let it go. I didn't want to let it go. And so I realized that maybe this story that I've been burning to tell might be right under my nose, might be right in front of me.
So the producers of this film, Gary Lucchese, Tom Rosenberg, they're Oscar-winning producers for $1 Million Baby, by the way. How did you make it known to them, as the actor on board the film, that you were interested in directing? Was that something you had to do gingerly or through your representatives, or did you just call them and say, hey, how about me?
I'd spoken to Rich Klubeck, my agent in LA, about he opened my eyes to it, if you like. He said, look, you've been asking me to find you something to direct for a long time. It might be right under your nose. And I was like, what? He said, maybe you should direct American Pastoral. And I went, like that. And we had Mondays off on doing this play, on Broadway. So I said, okay, give me Monday. So I woke up on Monday and I was alone in New York, and I made a big pot of coffee and I sat down with the script, and I made sure I had nothing to do all day, and I just sat with the script and I turned every page and I read every scene, and I really made myself look at it and think, can I do it? Can I see myself acting in this scene as the Swede? And do I see the scene? And do I think that I can do both? I was trying to be as honest with myself as possible. And
what did yourself say?
And by the end of it, I was so excited. I was so full of coffee, but I was so very excited about it. And I thought, yes, I can. And I also thought about the films that I didn't, those other 2 projects that over the 15 years that I'd been hoping to direct. I thought if these 2 if that was it, then I should be careful not to give up this opportunity. And I didn't even know if it was an opportunity yet, but I was sure of my suggesting that I could do it, because I felt sure that I should do it. I would regret not at least suggesting it. So I called Tom Rosenberg, the head of Lakeshore, and I said to him that what the film had meant to, how much it meant to me, and how important it had been for me to play this role, and that I suggested, I wondered if he would allow me the honor of directing it. He could put the trust in me to direct it. And he immediately said that he thought it was a good idea. He said, we think it's great, but you need to give me some time to, it's a big deal. He had to speak to people. And he spoke to those people. And he called me back, and I was on my way to the theater to do the play. And he called me and he said, okay, we're going to move the dates to September. We were going to shoot in March, and it's already December 2014. He said, we're going to push the dates to September. We're going to have to bring the budget down. We're going to have to renegotiate your fee. Okay. And you can direct the film. And I sort of put on this huge backpack full of weight, like that I carried for 16 months, the responsibility of this film. And and it changed my life totally. It was really an amazing honor that he did me, and putting a great deal of trust in me, because Tom has made, Lakeshore's made 2 other Philip Roth adaptations in the past. And this one he had been trying to make since the late 90s. 99, I think, was when he had the first draft written. So it's been a long time coming for him, and I knew that it was a very important film for him. And so he put his trust in me, and I'll always be very grateful for that,
Before we talk about some of the nuts and bolts about American Pastoral, I want to show you all the trailer for the film, which is a really kind of gutsy trailer. So let's take a look. I love that trailer because there's so little dialogue in it. I thought it was beautiful the way they put that all together. You know, years ago I was at this festival and I was interviewing Ed Harris, and he had directed Appaloosa, his first feature, and I asked him, you know, with all the different department heads that he worked with on his first movie as a director, what's the one that he needed the most guidance from, where he felt like he really didn't have anything to contribute? And he said it was the lighting. He said it wasn't something he felt he knew anything about, so he really relied extra heavily on the lighting designer to be on point. What would you say that was? Was there one department where you thought, it's just so out of my wheelhouse, I need you to really take the lead?
I felt that it's at the end of post-production. Sound design is something that I have the least experience of. As an actor, I work with DPs all the time, and I have an awareness of light. I've got no say in it as an actor, but I have an awareness of it. And I, you know, like I say, I've always liked to work with a crew. I feel like a filmmaker, and so I've had amazing discussions with amazing directors of photography over the years. So I have a sort of sense of it. And in a way, working with a DP is your... I mean, Martin Ruhr was our DP, and what an amazing, talented man he is. He shot Control for Anton Corbijn and The American for Anton Corbijn. He made a movie called Harry Brown, which was an independent British film. And the reason really why I chose him, at the beginning of this movie, there's a sequence of shots that introduce us to Michael Caine's character. And it's a nice, it's a sort of cute idea, I suppose. The film about a old-age pensioner in a council estate who becomes a vigilante and fights the sort of local yobbos. And it's a nice idea, it's a cute idea, I suppose. But his photography totally elevated it into something else. And these shots at the beginning of that movie, it starts with an iPhone shot of somebody running around the estate on a moped and shooting somebody. And then there's these cinematic shots of Michael Caine in bed, Michael Caine waking up and rolling over. He looks at the side table and we see what he sees. He sees a photograph of a wife that's not in his bed, so we assume maybe she's passed away. There's some pills, and then there's a shot under the bed as his feet come into frame, and then there's a shot in the kitchen as he's making breakfast, and then 2 shots as he's sitting eating breakfast, and we go out wide, and he's eating breakfast alone. And I knew at the end of these 8 shots, 6, 7, 8 shots, exactly who this man was. No dialogue. Wow. I don't think even maybe music, but I knew through his storytelling of these shots who he was. And I'd realized then, you know, that this is who I wanted to be at my side in terms of shooting it. And it's a very, very wonderful relationship and incredibly important. And as an actor, I've seen too many times first-time directors frustrating their experienced director of photography. And it's a really unfortunate thing that can happen. And I'm not surprised it happens, because as first-time directors, we make really stupid suggestions, or you know, your naivety can show itself. I sort of felt like I'd been around film sets for 23 years, so I wasn't really a first-time director, although officially I am. But I really couldn't afford that to happen. I couldn't have a difficult relationship with the DP and then step out in front of his camera and play the Swede. I just knew that was going to be that was a dangerous situation for me. So when I met Martin, I knew immediately that wouldn't happen. And because he's a gentleman and a gentleman, and he became a real partner. And we sat through the maybe 2 weeks of the prep with a whiteboard. And I'd done all the location scouting with Dan Clancy, our designer. It was a wonderful experience as well, to go out and find the locations. And all of these discussions are really fascinating, the creative discussion, that this is what I think it should feel like. That's not quite what I'd seen. And then you have these great conversations and find the right places. And so Martin and I knew most of the locations at this point. I would just draw a floor plan of the location that we'd found, and I would say, okay, this is what I've seen in my head. I don't know how many of you have seen the film, but there's a scene where I come back I've been given an award. I come back to my teenage daughter's bedroom, and she's sitting on a window ledge with her playing her music really loud, and we have a sort of argument. And I said, okay, this is what I had imagined, that maybe she's sitting on that window ledge. I come in the doorway, and maybe we have some of the dialogue in the doorway. And then I'll sit her down on her bed, and I'll bring her over to sit next to me. And then we have the last bit of the dialogue on the bed together. And I said, that's how I've seen it. And I would draw that up. So I would do little drawings of me and Dakota and arrows of where we were going to go. And then we would talk about how we would like it to feel. And that we'd watch lots of movies together. And the movie, I wanted the film to feel, I'll get back to sound designers in a minute.
That's
but,
okay. I'm eating this all up, and I'm sure
okay, good.
everybody
I
else
hope
is
this is
too.
all right. I sort of like wittering on. But anyway, so then we would talk about how we wanted it to shoot. The films that inspired me in the last few years were Leviathan, the Russian movie. And I loved that film so very much. I loved that film so very much. And I admired the bravery of it. I knew I couldn't be quite as extreme in terms of shots that are set and not move. But I loved the fact, as an actor, that director would set a frame and let the whole scene play in that scene. And it didn't matter if you were in a our temptation is to do a wide shot and then do a two shot and then come in the close up, and we sort of tell the audience how to feel. And something about that was just so exquisite. Like you can make your own mind up. Here are the actors playing the scene, and it relied on acting. And I'm an actor, and so I believe in that very much. And so that film, and then there's another film called Force Majeure, which was about an avalanche movie about that again was framed beautifully and held, and the camera moved. If it did, it moved for a reason, or maybe it didn't move for a reason, but it made you think. Oh, I thought that in Leviathan there was an amazing shot where they watch a car pull away and go out of shot, and then it comes back into shot and disappears, and then the camera moves. It was like, is it doing that? It was so great. So those are the kind of films. I knew we couldn't be as brave as that, but I knew I wanted a classical, still, meant frame, and I wanted to allow the actors to perform in that frame.
How good are the sketches that you made? I want to see one.
Well, they're really like technical.
Like stick figures?
Those dance diagrams you get where you have a pair of feet and arrows. They're a bit like that. They're not. I didn't storyboard the film. I resisted storyboarding because I don't like storyboards. I never, as an actor, like to see them on set. I think it takes a sort of spontaneity out of the equation, and it becomes a bit like painting by numbers. You go, okay, we've got that one, and someone with a big fuck-off Sharpie goes like that. and you just mark off the scenes, and it just feels a bit dreary, and it feels a bit planned out in advance. And as an actor, it's not really a very nice feeling. The worst feeling in the world is to come on a set and someone goes, okay, Mr. McGregor, you're on this mark here, and you're going to move over to that mark on this line. And I always look at these people and go, how do you know? Well, you're stand-in. I said, well, you should pay the stand-in my fee then. That's not why I'm here. So I don't like that feeling of pre-plannedness. However, I did want to have an idea. And so me and Martin plotted the whole movie, and there was a couple of scenes that we wrote TBD, which were the big family scene, the barbecue scene at the beginning. Oh, I keep forgetting, some of you haven't seen it. Has anyone seen it?
A lot of them.
Oh, okay, some of you. There's any of the big group scenes, of which there's only a few, I suppose, we didn't plan at all, because there's no way for me to know where the actors are going to be. I mean, I thought, okay, well, there'll be a barbecue, and there'll be a table with people. So we had a rough idea of where they might be, but we didn't decide who was going to be where, or we waited to rehearse that with the real actors. And then what would happen is we would discover that, the references I brought up, Leviathan and Force Majeure. So some of the scenes I wanted to shoot in one, and we had to decide what those scenes were. I had 35 days to shoot the film, and I partly wanted to do it because it is quick. You don't have to shoot coverage, so you just shoot one shot and you've got the scene. And I wanted it to do it for that reason. As an actor, it's exciting. I did a film with Woody Allen, and he shoots mainly, like maybe 85% of the scenes in that movie are single shot scenes. There's no coverage. And it's quite exciting as an actor who comes from the theater to act in a scene where there's not going to be any, this is it. And so you have to play the whole scene from start to finish. It feels a bit like theater. It sort of raises the stakes. you can't rely on close-ups and stuff, and it's exciting. So I wanted to do it for that reason, and because I like to see them in cinema. So for those 3 reasons. But I wanted to decide, we had to make sure we had decided which scenes they would be. And for scheduling and everything, it's important. So you know this scene will only take us a couple of hours, because that's the way it's going to go. So we would do that kind of thing. And then other scenes, because, okay, we need more coverage in this. We want to be able to, there's a sort of interrogation, if you like, scene at the beginning. My character is a Jewish man, and Jennifer Connelly is a Irish Catholic. And there's a scene where my father sort of, before we get married, sort of interrogates her, if you like, about religion. And she takes him, stands up to him. So that was a scene where there was going to be a lot of sort of back and forth, and we wanted to have coverage. And it was one of the few days we used 2 cameras at the same time. I like acting for our camera. It's very popular nowadays to shoot with 2. It's saving lots of time. You can do a medium shot and a close-up at the same time. But I think, and when you're doing that, the eye line is going to be wrong for one of them. Or the eye line is going to be slightly wide for the close-up, or slightly, or really wide for the wide shot, or whatever. And it just feels it's a bit odd as an actor with cameras. You're acting for them, although you don't really notice them when you're doing it, but there is a sense that you're performing the scene, if you like. That's the 2 halves of the brain again, I suppose, to the lens, which you know is over here. And when there's 2 of them, it's a bit odd. It's why it's very difficult to act when there's a B-roll person in the room. In fact, why I won't act if there's a B-roll person in the room. And if you're a B-roll cameraman, I'm sorry. But fuck off anyway. It's so weird. You don't notice a grip and a focus puller and a cinematographer and a boom swinger and a script supervisor. You don't notice these people, but if you're shooting B-roll and I'm half a mile over there, you're all I can see.
Wow.
It's really weird.
So about that sound design.
So the sound design, yeah, brings me...
I'm really loving this. I'm just giving you a hard time.
Which brings me back to sound design. So that's what we would do. And when we got on set, I'm not going to sound design yet. I won't do it. I'm not ready. So we did all that work, Martin and I, and we produced a shot list of pages and pages that we had and that we consulted. Like, Martin and I did that 2-week block in prep, and it was amazing and essential, and it caused us both to think the same way about the scenes. And if you like, it's why the film looks the way it looks. That's because of our input together at that time in front of a whiteboard with a marker pen. I wouldn't do it any other way, actually, now. I would always do that. And then when we got on set, and then we would meet every weekend, and we would review the shot list for the following week, and we would work through the scenes again for the coming week, and we did it whatever our day off was, Sunday. We would spend 3 or 4 hours doing that, and so we would go into the week having rethought or reimagined any of those scenes. And then when we got on set, Danny Boyle directed me in 3 of the most important films of my life in the early days. And he always would clear the set. We would rehearse with him maybe for a week or so before photography started. And that was always very interesting. And he was much better at it than I was, I think, that pre-rehearsal. But what he did, and what I absolutely adopted was, and have always loved as an actor, is to clear everybody off the set and rehearse every new scene on the location before you do it. And it seems totally obvious, but you would be amazed how many people don't do it, how many people feel like it's a waste of time, that just, let's get this scene lit, let's get the actors into makeup, we've got to get moving, we've got to keep moving. But what are we shooting? Well, who knows? It's a mystery to everybody because we haven't decided, and it leads to terrible time wasting later on, because everything's sort of, you walk on set, there's cameras, places, and nothing's born yet. We don't know what the scene is. So I would do that, and it was quite amusing at first, because my first assistant would say, okay, director and actor rehearsal, clear the set, and everyone would leave. And I'd walk onto the set with Dakota or Jennifer and realize it was just the 2 of us, you know, there was no director. So we'd shut the door and we'd both go, and then we'd figure it out. We'd work it out together. And I'd always start by saying, okay, this is what I had imagined. This is the way I saw it. Or I'd say, I didn't have an idea for this, or But generally, we would start off, trying the scene to see if it worked as I'd seen it in my head. And I would say probably as many times as it didn't work, it worked. It was really, I don't know how it worked, but it was always, there was always had to be the freedom to change our minds and to explore together. And then we'd bring Martin in, and it would just be the three of us, or however many actors, and the DP, and we would rehearse it for him again. And if he had a note about, sometimes there's a note about light, or, it might be better if you're not standing in front of the window, or if you're there, just for the light. And then you would discuss that, and if we would change it, and then you bring the whole crew in. And I think this is quite an interesting beat in for the actors anyway, because you bring the whole crew in, and then you perform the scene, and it really becomes like a little performance, because you have an audience suddenly. And as actors, that's what we do. You can't help but suddenly dig into the scene a little bit, because you've got people standing around watching it, and it does become like a little performance. And then you go off, and then of course if you've got lots of shots and you start dissecting that scene down to close-ups and 2 shots and whatever, then your actors all have a physical and emotional memory of the scene when we performed it for the crew, when there was no camera and there was no. And that's what that's what you're relying upon for those moments when you're picking up small bits of the scene, So then I finished the film, and I ended up mixing it with a sound designer. And I realized that really is something that I don't really know very much about, And during the editing process with Melissa Kent, who's a brilliant editor, and that 10 weeks or more that we had alone in an editing room is a fascinating process, and wonderful, like amazing. And Dakota said something this morning which is interesting, which I hadn't really considered. She said from her point of view, the fact that I was in the scenes meant that I carried the sense, the emotional truth of that scene into the edit room, and I made sure that that's how it felt to the viewer.
That's cool.
And that's interesting, because I hadn't really thought about that before. The director normally, or the director who isn't in the scene, has maybe a completely different experience of that scene. I mean, that's neither here nor there. But in our case, I was able to recreate in the edit room how it felt to play, and I was happy to hear her say that. So in the edit, you do temp sound, and you choose sound effects, and you put a nice moo in for the cow where you think it might be, or and slowly you build that sound bed up. Of course, mainly your work considering you're making dialogue choices, and then you're deciding where you might want to have music, and you put temp music in, which is another conversation, which we'll maybe have in a minute. And but the sound bed is then given to a sound designer, I guess. And when you come to do the mix, it's all new. And that last, and it's the last thing you do. You've done all the color correction. They sit in a cinema room, and you can alter to amazing degrees, darknesses, and you can pull up like highlights in people's faces and play with the image now in an incredible way when you're doing the grading, the color correction. And so the print becomes the print you want the audience to see. And then the last bit is you jump on your motorcycle in the morning and you ride up to Burbank to Warner Brothers and go into this big sound room with these sound guys, and they do this amazing work, sort of the same idea as the color correction, I guess, but with the sound. And it's almost the most, I mean, directing is just a million billion decisions that are made all the time. But I felt like that sound design, sound mix at the end is sort of, there's never more decisions made than that, because every second's like, that moo, no, there's another moo, let's bring the moo down, put the moo over to the left. Is there another moo? Get a louder moo. No, that sounds like and every single thing you hear in the movie, we had to decide to put in or not, or, no, the things we didn't put in, you didn't hear, but you know what I mean? It's like extraordinary amount of color that you can put in people's ears, and it absolutely changes things, like a room tone.
It's shocking that you finished this film. It really is, for many reasons. Can you imagine? I love it. Hey, Ewan, let's have a quick conversation about this one thing, half hour later. I love it. It's great.
That is why we're here, I thought.
I love it. No, it is. I'm loving it. So I have two more things, and then I'm going to open up to you all, because I'm sure you've got questions for you. And I was really intrigued by one thing that I learned listening to your press conference today, which is that the last 3 days, correct me if I'm wrong, of the shoot of this film were 3 days where you didn't act.
Yes.
Why didn't you start off with those 3 where you weren't actually acting, just to kind of ease your way into it?
The season, it was winter. It was supposed to be, we wanted those seasons, those to be autumnal or wintry.
Right.
And we started the film in the summer. And also, the majority of the film I'm in, and it's better just to get into it and on with it. And in actual fact, it was, you're better to jump in, I think. It would have been, I would have directed those first 3 days being sort of nervous about acting in it as well. And the fact that I started acting, I did my first shot. The very first shot of the film was walking along a riverbed with Hannah, who played my 12-year-old daughter, on a little camping trip, and we did that that was the very first shot I ever did as a feature film director.
I love hearing what the first shots are,
Yeah,
because I pay special attention. Just for the audience, listen to this astonishing list of some of the directors that you've worked with. Danny Boyle, Roman Polanski, Baz Luhrmann, George Lucas, Ridley Scott, Lasse Hallström, Steven Soderbergh, Ron Howard, Mira Nair, Woody Allen, Michael Bay, Tim Burton, Todd Haynes, Peter Greenaway. I mean, it's crazy. The list is insane. I know that you say that you feel like you were influenced and inspired by all of them, but now that the process is over and you can take a step back, which of all the filmmakers that you've worked with do you think you hew closest to as far as your directing style? And then who would you say you hew more closely to based on your demeanor on set?
Probably Michael Bay for both of those answers, yeah. I like the film I made with Michael Bay, I do. Well, I don't know. This is the. I mean, I think I would hope it was Danny Boyle in a way. I think because he was my first ever director. He directed Shallow Grave, which was my first feature film. He directed the last film I made, which was called Trainspotting 2. And
So excited.
and I, you know, he set the bar very high as in what that relationship can be between a director and an actor. He came from theater. I came from theater. He knows what you're doing as an actor. I've always felt with him that he had seen and felt and understood exactly what I was trying to do, and that's not always the case with directors. And it's a lovely feeling when you know they're getting it, when they're really feeling it and seeing it. And I hoped I was like that with the actors that I was working with.
And he's a real nice and decent guy too. You know,
Right.
I imagine on the set he's like that.
Yes, he sort of leads. He leads, but he's not a teddy bear, but he's gentle, and you want to work your best for him. And he pushes everybody quite hard in terms of, and the actors, I always loved that as an actor. I felt like every take he gave you something to reach for, but it was always based somewhere within what you were doing. So you never felt like, why is he asking me to do? That's not what I'm trying to reach for at all. But he in the same direct. I don't know. I loved working with him.
And how cool that 20 years later you came back.
I know.
to work.
Great.
So great.
Yeah.
All right. I'm sure you all have questions. There are people with microphones, and they've got orange T-shirts on, and they will hand you a mic. Yes, right here on the aisle.
Oh, first one. Great, thanks. Hi, Ewan.
Hello.
I saw the film this morning. Congratulations. I think you've done a great job. I was very impressed by it.
Thank you.
My question is, you kind of touched on it in the Q&A after the film this morning. Both as an actor and as a director, it's the most important thing that you do is, of course, storytelling. And I was just wondering, since it took you so long to find this project to direct, what particular part of the story was it that actually got you to do this one? And for the next one that you're hopefully going to do, what is it that you're looking for in the story?
Yeah.
And also, while I'm up here, can I just say that I fucking can't wait for Trainspotting 2. It's
out in January. You don't have to wait long. Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I lived with the film for 3 years as an actor, you know, like I've said, and it's difficult. It's only now that I'm looking back on and wondering why. Why did I stick with it so long? Why did it become so necessary for me? And why did I still love this story. I loved watching it last night, and probably at this point I shouldn't like watching it so much. You know, I've seen it so many times and I know what made it up, but I still do. I'm still sort of moved by the story, and I can only assume it's because it's about a father and his daughter, and I am the father of 4 daughters, and I know very much about what that relationship is. And I look back when I was first given the script to read. My eldest daughter, Clara, was living at home and was a teenager, a 15-year-old teenager girl. And now that I'm sitting here in front of you, having made this film, she's starting her 3rd year at NYU in New York. And she doesn't wake up in our home anymore. And she does, you know, she's left the house. And of course, she's still absolutely part of our lives and everything. But there was a loss of, and that's what this film is about. And maybe that's what it was. I don't know. This is in retrospect, but maybe that's why I like it so much, because I was getting ready to let my eldest go. And here's a film about a man who's, in a very extreme way, is losing his daughter. I don't know. Maybe that's what keyed me in so hard to it. And the risk, of course, is that it takes another 15 years to find the next story, because I really liked doing this, and I'd like to do it again. And I would like to do it again sooner than that. So I might have to go out and make it happen, might have to be more active in it this time. And all I can say is I suppose I have a feeling of what I would want to do next. And that feeling is like I should make my first movie, because I feel a bit like I made my second movie. I had amazing actors to work with. I had a budget that was not a tiny budget. I had the backing of Lakeshore. I had wonderful people to work with. And I had a 35-day schedule. I had a very relaxed post-production schedule. And I was supported absolutely across the board. And I sort of maybe feel like I missed my $3 million, 5-week shoot with we were running around painting stuff and shooting on it. And I think I might like to do that. I might like to do it in Scotland. I might like to do it with young people and not be in it. And something contemporary and urban, something those are my rough feelings at the moment, is to go back and do something small and gritty.
That sounds cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm looking for funding, so we've got a hat that's going to be.
Well, look, you can shoot it at Pinewood, but you don't want to shoot it at Pinewood.
Well, we can turn Pinewood into the streets of Glasgow.
There
It'll
you
be
go.
fine.
Good. Hi.
Hi, I just want to say congratulations on your first feature as a director. I think that's amazing.
Thank you.
So my question, you just touched on it before, but as an actor and director, like from this experience, do you feel now that was it tough to be an actor and directing on a film? Like who was kind of behind the monitor? Because I myself as a director, I just completed my first feature and I did a small part as an actor in it, and I find it was actually quite difficult because there's so many departments you have to talk to, and then you have to get into your role. And like for your next one, would you really like to focus more on the directing and that experience of it, or do you like doing the acting and directing at the same time?
It was my experience of this was doing both, and I didn't find it to be. I think if I'd only had a small part in the middle of a feature, say I only had 1 day's acting, then of course it's quite awkward because you get in a rhythm of directing from behind the monitor. And then if you have to suddenly jump in front, that would be quite difficult. But I did one, and I was in, the Swede is right through this movie. He's in almost every scene. I had 3 days at the end that I didn't act, and they were the last 3 days of the schedule. And I didn't really, it was great. I was working with David Strathairn and Rupert Evans in those scenes. The funeral with all the actors, really. And there was the funeral scene and the reunion scene. And but I found it slightly odd to be going in to give notes and then retreating out of the scene. It was much easier, in actual fact, to have a note and give the note and say, okay, let's try this, and then be in the scene. And then being in the scene, of course, you have some control over where it's going anyway because you're in it. And So I liked it. I didn't think that it was I didn't think it distracted, because I really, really did my prep properly. I was there in Pittsburgh for 12 weeks before we shot. And I think I was there with most people. There was like 6 of us. There was a location manager, a designer, a line producer, and everyone was going, why is Ewan here? You know, what's Ewan doing here? Because usually I think the director doesn't turn up till later. But I was there from the beginning. I needed to be there for my own peace of mind. It gave me an enormous amount of time and space to just live in the book, and even looking at all the wrong locations. Well, you're getting ideas of why they're wrong. You're furthering your idea of what's right by seeing the wrong thing. So I really felt like we did as a team. We really prepped it very, very well. And so by the time we did get on set, we had everything. We discussed it. We knew how it was going to go. We just shot our prep, and it was quite smooth, really. We finished on schedule, and we finished on budget, and I was quite proud of that.
Who's got the mic over here? Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
I wanted to ask you a question about kind of a pivotal moment when you're kind of walking on like the first time going in as a director and an actor, because you started with those scenes. How did you gauge in and out of the two places? I mean, like you said earlier about carrying that huge burden of responsibility, that backpack that you put on, and then the transfer between the two sides of the brain, between the technical side and then like almost putting that aside and being focused as your creative side took over. Was there anybody that you trusted in particular and that you saw as like a fundamental component to the production?
Everyone. I mean, everybody on set I trusted with that. I mean, the thing about making a movie is it's a collaboration, And my favorite directors are the people that's like Danny, who stand in the middle of these incredibly talented people and allow everybody to do their best work, and are leading and are steering, but they're allowing everybody to excel. And that's very exciting when you're on a set like that. And that's what I hope mine felt like. That's what I would like to have done. But you trust everybody. I didn't have somebody that I needed to. I didn't have somebody keeping an eye on my performance. I didn't need that. I was never more prepared for a role in my life. Prepping the movie for 9 months is about living in the story. And because in this instance I was able to allow work with the heads of department to create what it looked like and felt like and sounded like, and all of that's based in my imaginings of it, and the Swede is in all of those scenes, and so he's part of it. And he had been for 9 months, so I'd been considering him, in a way, if you like, for 9 months. So I was ready to play him. I didn't really need to think about that too much. And I also only love acting when it's immediate and real with the other actor. I didn't come in with my performance of the Swede that I laid down in front of the camera. I had to find him with the other actors in those scenes. And that's what great acting is to me. That's the most exciting kind of acting. I mean, of course, it doesn't matter ultimately. Like, somebody can come in and do their work, and sometimes you're I would never name names, but sometimes you acting with someone and you think, I needn't be here. It doesn't matter that I'm on the other side of this scene for their close-up, because they've got this down, But I like it to feel real, or to be surprised, or something comes at you weren't expecting. That's the most exciting thing. And all of this amazing cast were those kind of actors. And so my Swede is born out of that. It wasn't an issue. It was pretty fluid, really. And I've always trusted my feelings that we've got it. I think actors feel it, or the immediate shooting crew feel it. Usually when you're doing 4 takes and something, in the 5th take, you get it. Everyone sort of feels it. And there's a moment the director will go, cut, and the camera guy will go, and all the actors will go, yeah. You just know. You know that you got it, and it's time to move on. So I trusted that. I trusted that with myself. I'll tell you an interesting thing, though. I spoke to Ben Affleck before I shot this film, who I've met here and there over the years.
You just dropped something here.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Because he's an actor who's directed himself in films. And I asked him if he had any advice, if anything that I should think about. And he said you should be careful that you cover yourself. Because he said you'll be tempted, you'll find it sort of embarrassing to give yourself another take if you need one. And you feel like you should just shoot the other actors and move on. And he said you can find that you're in the edit room with not enough of coverage on yourself. And I thought that was quite good advice. And I found that in the edit room I had plenty footage of myself. But what I did was that I didn't sort of put enough of it in. And towards the end in early iterations of our movie, the Swede wasn't quite present enough in the end, because I was sort of doing that, of not putting myself in the cut enough. And so we had to do a pass where in the last act, where we made sure that the Swede was sort of more present. And that's something, I suppose, that directing and acting in the same thing is something to bear in mind, that my friend Ben passed on to me.
Listen, I did it with Ed Harris earlier, so I
Yeah, I
have no
didn't
right.
do that
I have
with
no
you,
right to give you a hard time. Who's got the mic over here? Hi.
Hi. I'll preface my question with the fact that I haven't seen American Pastoral yet. I'm very looking forward to it, but I haven't seen it yet. And I was just kind of curious, with your intimate understanding of what an actor's role is on set that you've kind of talked about over like the last hour, when you were casting for the film, were you also looking for like versatile actors such as yourself that you could just kind of throw anything at, or were you looking more for like typecasting actors and just actors that would perfectly fit the role as it's written?
You're looking for that. You're looking for the character that's in you. You're looking for the actor who makes you think, oh, that's them, you know. And it can be something that they do. You know, it's interesting nowadays. Of course, you see so many people on tape. Some of our actors were cast from stuff they did on tape. Valerie Curry, who plays Rita Cohen, is an unbelievable performance in this movie. It was a long casting process for that part, and I read with really good actors, and in person, you know, did like auditions. That was weird. That was sort of my first experience of acting and directing, and I'd be doing screen tests with people where I'd be watching them, and then they'd look at me funny, and I think that's an interesting look, and they're looking at me because I'm not saying the line that I meant to say. And it's so embarrassing when you're auditioning. Somebody go, "Fuck, sorry." When you make a mistake. Anyway, doesn't bode well that you can imagine their thinking. But she sent something in on tape which just blew us away. And we were looking, and that was a sense of, there was lots of people that could have played Rita, and I just felt like like Rita Cohen, I hadn't walked in the room, you know? And when I saw Valerie's bit on tape, I realized that that's who I'd been waiting to find. You know, Jennifer was cast before I was directing. Dakota was cast before I was directing. And my first job when I became the director was to go and ask them if they would both stay with the project, with me directing, because, you know, they would have had every right to not do that. But thank goodness they both stayed on. And then you find the most right people for those parts. Quite exciting casting.
Well, let me say, for those of you who haven't seen it, if you don't get a chance to see it here at TIFF, it is opening in theaters next month for anyone who's watching this or anyone in the audience. But Ewan, you are an absolute pleasure to talk to, and congratulations on this fantastic film. Ewan McGregor, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Great to see you.